voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silenced, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence the small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone. Great to have everyone here. We had a lot stacked up and ready to share with you tonight. We're going to talk about the ongoing fallout from the Rebel News friction, chaos, carnival at the leaders' debate for the Canadian election a couple of days ago. The story continues, and Trump's weirdest Easter ever, maybe the weirdest in my lifetime. Why weird? We'll tell you why as they prepare for the big Easter egg roll. Preparations underway. In fact, you know what? Why delay? Why delay? We'll go there right now. We'll show you what's going on with the Easter egg roll preparations at the White House. Here we go. It's a tradition. And this year, Trump has rejected calls to use plastic eggs, even though there's a giant shortage of real eggs because of, I guess, the culling of chickens because of bird flu or whatever. He says, no, we're using real eggs anyway. I also have to say, I find it really creepy every year when the president, regardless of who the president is, comes out on the balcony of the White House with that giant Alice in Wonderland Easter bunny guy. That bunny creeps me out. You know, clowns do it to some people. For me, it's the Easter bunny. But there's even more to this, and we have a lot of other stories to share with you tonight as well. Some international, some domestic. We're going to talk about the Hudson's Bay bankruptcy. John out in Alberta has information on that for us tonight. And we're going to talk to Brian Howell, who has been digging into the Rebel News story a little bit. And we'll show you some of the newest developments on that front. And we've got a whole lot more as well. So stay with me. I'll be right back with today's top news stories.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. So where shall we begin tonight? See what I can get lined up here. Spent all afternoon putting stuff together, and here I am, even now, just trying to decide where to start. I don't want to get into the Rebel News stuff because Brian's going to talk about that. I don't want to get into the Hudson's Bay stuff yet because John's going to talk about that. So we should probably start right here with Pierre Poilievre out in British Columbia today, talking about inflation as he continues his campaign and quest for the Prime Minister's office. So let's go out there now. Poilievre.
So much money that the UK would go on to have 11% inflation, and it was the highest in all of the G7. He also is widely blamed for having caused the housing crisis in the UK by printing so much money. Le PDG de Brookfield a dit que leur entreprise profite de l'inflation. Et M. Carney est toujours investi dans cette entreprise, profitant ainsi de l'inflation pour l'avenir. Inflation drove up the value of assets for the super rich while driving down the purchasing power of the people in the communities like this who work so hard to put food on the table. Now, Mr. Carney est en train de promettre un autre 130 000, excusez-moi, M. Carney est en train de promettre un autre 130 milliards de dollars de dépenses inflationnistes au-delà des dépenses déjà prévues par le gouvernement Trudeau. J'ai dit que M. Carney était tout comme Justin, mais en fait, il est encore pire. Il est plus coûteux et il va causer plus d'inflation. Si on ajoute les déficits déjà prévus par Justin Trudeau au déficit que M. Carney veut ajouter, c'est un quart d'un billion de dollars de dettes inflationniste que les libéraux ajouteraient si ils sont élus pour un 4e mandat. On ne peut pas payer le prix d'un 4e mandat libéral. That the Liberals are reelected, they will add, by their own numbers, $250 billion in extra inflationary debt, driving up your food, your housing, and everything you buy. We can't afford a 4th Liberal term of inflation. We need a change. Change so you can afford food, change so you can afford homes, change so you're safe on your streets. To pay for all this spending, we will see more debt that will threaten the livelihoods of Canadians. Even a Liberal, the former chief economist at the Public Sector Pension Investment Board, called the Liberal platform a, quote, spendorama with even larger deficits than Freeland's that just go on forever. Canadians cannot afford this 4th Liberal term. We need a change. We need to turn the direction of the country around. We need to stand up for hardworking Canadians and the purchasing power of their dollars. That's why, as Prime Minister, I will axe the inflation tax. We will do this by cutting waste, capping spending, reducing deficits, taxes, and inflation. We will cut bureaucracy, foreign aid, handouts to corporate insiders, special interest groups, and consultants. To be very specific about it, I'm going to address the inflated cost of consultants, which have gone up over 100% during the lost Liberal decade, costing the average family today well over $1,000 in federal taxes just to pay for consultants. Can you imagine that? You're spending over $1,000 in federal taxes just to pay for consultants. This is insane. And that's why I'm announcing today I will cut the federal government's budget for consultants by $10 billion, bringing it back to the level it was under Stephen Harper. $10 billion less for high-priced consultants means $10 billion less inflation, means $10 billion more affordable life for Canadians. Furthermore, instead of creating more cash, we will create more of what cash buys. We will unleash our economy by removing anti-development laws, red tape, and destructive taxes to add $500 billion of extra economic growth over the next 5 years. That will produce $70 billion in additional revenue for the government without higher taxes, but instead using higher growth. These estimates are based, these confirmed calculations are based on the economic validation of the former chief economic analyst of Statistics Canada, Philip Cross, and the former associate deputy minister at Finance Canada, Dr. Tim Sargent. They confirm that rapidly approving massive natural resource projects, getting rid of Bill C-69, the anti-development law, and the tanker ban, setting up shovel-ready zones to approve projects, and unleashing investment by allowing the people to reinvest their capital gains tax-free in Canada will unleash this boom. It will be like economic rocket fuel for our country, producing more of what people need. You see, if you want to fight inflation, if you want to have stronger purchasing power, instead of adding more cash, you need to add more of what cash buys. Build more homes, grow more food, and produce more energy. And that is what we will do. We'll unleash our economic might so that we produce the things that Canadians need to buy. This will also boost the dollar. When we sell more of our goods on the world stage, what happens? You actually boost the dollar, and that increases the purchasing power for everything that we sell to the world and everything that we buy at home. The globally priced commodities like food and energy become more affordable when the dollar goes up. And that is part of our plan, to axe the Liberal inflation tax and make your life affordable.
I don't know. I think there's only kind of a partial truth to what he's telling you there. The reality is, Canada, because we are a resource-based economy, has always tried to keep its dollar somewhat below the value of the US dollar. How is that done? The Bank of Canada sets the interest rate they peg it at a point that ensures the Canadian dollar actually remains below the US dollar. That's why the Canadian dollar is always somewhere in the range of 70 cents to 80 cents US. Sometimes it even dips down as low as 60 cents US. And that's because it makes our goods, our oil, our resources more affordable, and everything we produce here more affordable, more cost competitive into the US market. That's always, in my entire lifetime, that is the way it has been done. It's not because the Canadian dollar has to be worth less than the US dollar. It's because the interest rates are set, the trend setting, as they say, Bank of Canada rate is set at a rate that is below a point where the Canadian dollar would rise. If you have higher interest rates, that encourages more savings and more money retention, because people put their money into more financial products, including bank accounts, where higher rates of interest are paid. If the interest rates are up, then people spend less, save more, and you get a higher value in the dollar. What he's telling you there is not entirely the whole story. So if you're thinking that the Canadian dollar is going to go way up in value with Poilievre at the helm, you've got another thing coming. It's not going to matter who is elected. The Canadian dollar is still going to float somewhere between 60 cents and maybe 90. It depends on what the economic conditions are. But with these tariffs in place, don't look for that dollar to rise much. If there are tariffs, even without tariffs, but if there are tariffs, it's going to force the value of the dollar down, because the tariffs on the US side will actually force the US dollar up. That's a fact. And that's an inconvenient truth. And he's telling you kind of a half sort of a truth there. Yeah, the more you sell, the more strength the economy gets, but they're going to ratchet that interest rate down to keep the dollar down so that our exports remain competitive, so that our economy continues to hum along. And it's actually better for the Canadian economy and better for people here, for Canadians, to have a dollar that's actually a little bit lower than the US, even 30%, sometimes 40% lower. Doesn't mean our dollar's crashing. There's a bigger picture to the whole thing when it comes to the economy. And it takes, well, that's what it takes to keep the economy here competitive. And that's what we've always done. The Chinese do it on a much larger scale. They use really, I would say, unfair currency manipulation tactics and techniques. But here's Carney in Nepean, Ontario, rallying. I see he rolled out his wife like Poilievre has. She introduced him here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Diana, for that introduction. And not just for that, because while I've been out campaigning across the country, you've been out here knocking on doors in Nepean, putting signs in the ice, campaigning with those great Ottawa area candidates, representing this campaign locally with the same commitment and compassion that you bring to everything you do. Thank you, Diana. It is, what a day, what a day. To be back in Nepean on this day when we celebrate with renewed hope for eternal glory. And of course, I'm speaking about the Senators being in the Back from the dead. Back from the dead. Although, this is a national campaign, so I like Toronto too. But I'm sorry. Sorry. I don't want to be accused of saying different things in different places, but go Sens, go. Canada strong together, that's right. As long as the Canadian team wins. Look, I want to thank the Lusitania Portuguese Club of Ottawa for giving us their parking lot and their support. I look forward to hopefully working with you as Nepean's Member of Parliament. Now I have a question. Who's ready? Who is ready? Who is ready? Who is ready? Who's ready to stand up for Canada with me? Qui est prêt? Hey, qui est prêt? We love you. I love you too. I love you too. That's why I'm here. Who's ready to help the Liberal Party win the most consequential election of our lifetimes? You know, this is the most consequential vote of our lifetimes because President Trump has ignited a trade war that is ruptured. No, we don't like Trump here. We don't like Trump here. Ruptured the global economy and changed forever our relationship with the United States. That old relationship is over, unfortunately. Never 51. It is a tragedy. It is a tragedy, but it's the new reality.
We are the best.
And we're responding. We are responding with purpose and with force. On se bat, on protéger et on bâtir. We are fighting. We are fighting back with tariffs of our own that are causing maximum damage in the United States with minimum impact here. We are protecting our workers by taking all the dollars. Steve McKinnon is counting all the dollars from those tariffs. And he's making sure that they are going to the workers and the businesses most affected by Trump's unjustified trade war. And above all, we are building Canada strong. We are building Canada strong. Now, that's going to take some big changes. That's going to take some big changes to do. And I'm ready. I'm a pragmatist. I'm not a career politician. I'm trying to become a politician, not for a career. Just to be clear. But as a pragmatist, when I see something that's not working, I change it. So, when I became Prime Minister, we see that homes are too expensive. We know homes are too expensive here in Nepean. So we immediately cut taxes on them. We saw that there was a capital gains tax hike that was stifling the builders and innovators that we need for this country to move forward. So we reversed it. We knew that the carbon tax had become too divisive. So we got rid of it on day one. Nous avons élargi.
Okay. Now, we're going to go to Nanaimo. Jagmeet Singh, NDP, campaigning there in British Columbia.
Bring it in here! Yeah! Big shout out to make some noise for Lisa Marie.
Yeah. I'll get down.
And make some noise for Gorgeous!
No, he stayed.
All right, so a couple of things. We got to send a clear message for anyone listening, all the media out there. Who beats conservatives on Vancouver Island?
NDP!
Who beats conservatives on Vancouver Island?
NDP!
got a couple more of those. One other thing that we're known for, we care deeply about our environment. Who defends our coast? NDP! Who defends the coast? NDP! Okay, now what about if you're worried about the high price of groceries? Who is the only party ready to take on the big corporate grocery stores ripping you off, to bring in a price cap, to bring down food prices? NDP! Okay, what about this though? Who is the only party ready to ban corporate landlords that are trying to buy up affordable homes?
I think that's NDP!
Yes! Alright, so are we ready to keep on knocking doors?
Yeah!
So let the message be heard!
Yeah!
That we are the party for the people!
Yeah!
Now, in this election, we want folks to know something that we've always known for a long time now, that Canada works best when one party doesn't hold all the power. Canada works best when one party doesn't hold all the power. Canada works best when the NDP is strong. Every single thing that we are proud of as a country, every single thing that we are proud of, every single thing that we are proud of.
So as you can see,
Healthcare,
the
pensions,
messaging from
security, happiness,
Jagmeet Singh has shifted, no longer talking about running for prime minister, shifting over talking about the need for the NDP to stand in opposition. So he's, I guess, trying to be realistic with voters, and it's not even that he's likely to form the official opposition, maybe third, maybe fourth, maybe not even fifth party. It looks like the NDP is in a bit of trouble. They may not even retain official party status based on the current polling. Of course, every time I turn around, people are saying, I don't believe the polls, for whatever reason. Although the opinion seems to shift when the polling is running in favor of whatever team people happen to be on. But as the Conservatives blew their lead in the poll, which is something the Conservatives have a history of doing, you know, they tend to have elections in hand at times, and then it just disintegrates on them inexplicably sometimes. But maybe it's because they just get outmaneuvered by a more powerful liberal machine. Okay, so again with the Easter egg roll, Trump saying, just rejecting this whole idea that maybe they should have plastic eggs this year. Says, nope, going with the real deal. So they have about 2,500 eggs, 2,500 dozen eggs, which is about 30,000 eggs being provided for the Easter egg roll. And I just showed you the preps underway for that. And all this happening, even as there is a national, I don't know if you'd call it a shortage, but I guess it's a decline in availability of eggs and of course you're seeing a massive price increase as a result of the supply reduction. They have a bunch of different corporate sponsors that get involved in the whole thing. And I have to say, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but whenever I see the images of Trump or any president on the balcony with that Easter bunny guy, it creeps me out. Here's what we're talking about with regard to the Easter egg roll.
This Easter, the White House is choosing to use real eggs instead of fake ones. This decision, despite the national shortage of real eggs.
They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? I said, we don't want to do that.
This year's egg roll will feature 30,000 real eggs for guests to decorate and then use in the games. 30,000 eggs, or 2,500 dozen, is the normal amount used in previous years. The Egg Board has provided the eggs for this event for years. They often rely on donations from farmers across the country. But this year, we're told that the board had several internal conversations about the optics of using tens of thousands of real eggs, given how the bird flu has burdened egg farmers and contributed to high prices. Still, they've decided to supply the event with eggs, and some farmers have some thoughts. One farmer told us that rolling eggs across a lawn is a waste given the shortage. But another, who isn't able to donate any eggs this year because of the bird flu, says that the White House is in the right and that they shouldn't use fake eggs. This year will mark the first time the Easter egg roll only includes small and medium-sized eggs, which are not sold at markets, according to the Egg Board. Prices have declined in recent weeks, but they're still higher than typical. For all the debates here in Washington, this one is much less likely to be over easy, and instead, much more scrambled.
What a play on words. All right, so there's all that, and then there was this too with Trump. This is also why I think things just got a little bit weird for me. Trump says that nobody has done more for Christianity than him. Okay. And nobody's done more for religion than him. Here he is on CBN. And I think this was posted with the intent of, thinking that this would be like a positive thing for the president.
Nobody has done more for Christianity. Nobody has done more for religion of all type than me. And they're really doing things now and I've always said it, they are against organized religion. They're against Christianity. Nobody has done more for Christianity. Nobody has done more for religion of all type than me. And they're really doing things now and I've always said it, they are against organized religion. They're against Christianity.
Just nobody's done more for religion than me. Mother Teresa, popes, Jesus.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Yeah, it's just, for me, the whole thing pretty freaking weird. Big giant Alice in Wonderland Easter banners. I didn't show you a picture of that. If you want to see one, it's on the thumbnail. But when they actually get into the Easter egg roll, you'll see the president out there hopping around with Peter Cottontail hopping down the White House bunny trail. Nobody's done more for religion than Donald Trump. Right. Okay, let's get things fired up here. We're going to go to Brian Howell here in just a moment. And then we're going to dig into a couple of stories with Brian. He was out at well, it was sort of two protests rolled into one. He'll tell you the story of that. And we'll get into this fallout from the Ezra Levant Rebel News, what do you call it? Clown show at the leaders debate. It just turned into a giant thing. I don't even know what you call it. I'll come up with a word between now and the time we come back. Stay with me. More right after this.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
All right, we're back, and we're going to bring Brian Howell in here. There we are. Let's get Brian up on the screen. And yeah, hang on a second here. And there you are, Brian. Now you're on.
Okay, happy Easter.
Well, happy Easter to you too, sir. Great to have you back.
It kind of feels like I'm living in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, well, it has been a little bit weird looking at what's going on with Trump. And actually, you know what? I apologize. I've lost the photos that you sent to me. I'm going to see if I can get them downloaded here while we speak. First of all, I want to talk to you about two things today. The protest that you went to, obviously, and also the Ezra Levant Rebel Media show that we got from the leaders debate here in Canada 2 days ago.
Right.
Because I know that you have been, you're an author, you have written some books on World War II history, and you've got a background in literature, and history, and you've been digging, and media, and you've been digging into over, I guess, like, how many months have you been researching what's been going on with Rebel News?
About 3 months.
Wow, 3 months.
But it'd probably be the idea of writing something about Rebel News probably began just after Trump's election. Within a week or two of that, we started hearing about the 51st state business.
Right.
And which Rebel News had kind of picked up on. Well, I'm for Canada. I'm going to fight for my country.
Right. Interesting that things have come to this question of separation. Is that one of the undercurrents, do you think, with what's going on with Rebel News?
Well, the direct research began when they actually did a 10th anniversary show a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, my God, have they been around that long? And yes, they have. They were the granddaddy of Canadian podcasters and broadcasters. And it is a media outlet, not just one guy or one woman. It's an actual media outlet that have decided to focus on the neoconservative brand. And for a while, they've done some good material and a lot of bad. But Ezra Levant has an entire history behind him. It's not just Rebel News from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
His years on Sun TV, his years running a magazine, his years on the fringes of political strategy. Goes way back to the mid-90s.
And what do you make of what happened? Like, well, let me help kind of lead the conversation here a little bit. So I take it you saw the video from the other night at the leaders debate, right? When there was all this friction and we saw David Menzies shoving his camera into the face of liberal staffers and production team as they were walking into the venue with the bright light just inches from the one guy's face, and then the other guy doing the same thing to him as he was rolling a cart of what appeared to be like audio visual equipment in.
Right.
And then there was the confrontation and the shouting match inside the media room, and the one guy from Ricochet Media having a verbal exchange with Ezra Levant, accusing him basically of having overloaded the media roster with Rebel Media employees and sort of butting in line or dominating the questions. With over 100 journalists there, Rebel ended up getting 4 reporters with questions in a very, in what is really a very limited amount of time. The vast majority don't get to ask a question at all because you have over 100 journalists present at the event, but somehow Rebel managed to insert themselves and get 4 on the first night, and then the other reporter complaining and confronting really Ezra Levant from a distance, shouting back and forth at each other. They were in the media room with accusations of political activism rather than journalism on behalf of Ezra Levant because of the third party advocacy corporation or business that Levant has set up called For Canada, which was being used to raise potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars for attack ads against Mark Carney, and that's being used to fund that truck that's been driving around all the different political rallies and events with the big digital billboard on the side with the pictures of Mark Carney on the side and all the anti-liberal slogans. That's funding that.
Yeah, I've seen that truck.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a bit priceless. Ezra Levant using the funded by the government line. Sun TV was partly funded through government sources. He wrote several books funded by the Canada Council for the Arts publishing department. In fact, he was part of taken on as a writer at a literary agency years ago, the Cook Agency. One of the other 30 or 40 authors they were representing was Sacha Trudeau. So for Levant to say these media are simply government funded, he has been government funded. It's not just CBC, TTV, Global, the newspapers, the Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, the Ottawa Citizen, Montreal Gazette, and so on.
Yeah. It's interesting, the reality that we have here right now, too, is that media outlets like Rebel News do not really need to provide financial transparency to the degree that certainly a state broadcaster like CBC does. We can find out where all of their revenue comes from. There's complete transparency. But when it comes to Rebel Media, they receive a lot of donations from a lot of different sources, they do generate huge amounts of money for any media outlet, even more than I would say most truly independent media organizations, including, local newspapers. Like here in my community, we have a paper called the Chatham Voice. It's just like a weekly newspaper, very difficult to make it run. And, compared to the amount of money they can generate, Rebel Media generates huge amounts of money.
Yeah, they get a lot of money from subscribers and donors who wish to keep them going. Funny thing is, you mentioned their famous billboard sign truck.
Mm-hmm.
Ezra Levant ran a little fundraiser maybe a month or two ago. The truck broke down. He needed a new transmission. He initiated a fundraiser on his channel, and within a day he got $6,500, and they got a new transmission for their truck, which they drove to Ottawa, Montreal, elsewhere, Windsor. So
wow,
they're always feeding at the public trough a lot.
Yes,
fundraisers for this, fundraisers for that.
Yeah, fundraisers for all kinds of legal battles. Every time their reporters get arrested, thrown in the clink, or apparently assaulted. And, I think if you looked at it statistically, Rebel Media probably has had their reporters assaulted more than any other media outlet in Canadian history, probably with every other media outlet combined. That's a guess. I'm not saying that's a fact, but based on what I've been seeing, I can't think of any media outlet that has ever had reporters arrested so many times over and over again, or assaulted at protests more than Rebel Media. Here's a letter from, and if anyone has actual stats on that stuff, I'd be very interested to learn more about it. Now, I'll be digging into those stats now that I think about it. That was just me on the fly. But the Rebel Media, Sheila Gunn Reid posting this, saying that they are now filing a letter of complaint with the debate commissioner, saying that they have concerns about the treatment of Rebel News journalists during the recent federal leaders debates. So now they're victims again. While people are they're being accused of actually creating the problem there. And I would say, based on what I saw with what David Menzies was doing outside, that in itself, as far as I'm concerned, could be grounds for just being ejected from the event. Because, well, you might sit there and say, oh, they're trying to censor Rebel News, or they're, they just want to shut them down. And it shows that they don't want Rebel to have, they want to violate their free speech, or their right to free speech. That the reality, well, the perspective I have on this is that any media outlet that goes into a venue like that, certainly a political event, a leadership debate at the national level, it is not a right for any media outlet to be there. It is a privilege. The reason I say it's a privilege and not a right is because there is a limited amount of space available. It is a private venue, but it is a national debate, and it is in the public interest. It is of public interest, and it is for any media outlet that is given the privilege of attending. The privilege is a privilege insofar as it is a privilege to be serving the public. And it is not the place of any media outlet there really to be exercising their personal or corporate or business right to free speech. It's their responsibility to act as the eyes and ears of the public, to make sure that they are representing the voice of the people. And so when you inject yourself and your political opinion or your political agenda into that space, you are abusing the privilege of being there to be one of the representatives of the people. That is, in my view, what Rebel Media was doing there at that venue. Just the fact that they had their trucks circling the building with their anti-liberal slogans being broadcast on the side of it. That for me
Ezra Levant
is
has had a long history of doing things like that, even with his years on Sun TV.
Yeah.
Railing behind with a camera and a microphone, trying to corner David Suzuki or Jack Layton, and they're pushy. They're really, really pushy.
So,
and then if you try to step away from them, they always cry, "Well, it's our free speech to know. We're asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
We're defending democracy. We're fighting for freedom." Are they?
Are
it's
they
being inappropriate? You know?
Yeah. And if you are on the street, fine. You're out. You can practice journalism any way you want. You want to broadcast what you want to broadcast on your social media platforms. That's yours. That's your space. You want to put what you want on your website. You do that over there. But when you are charged with a public trust, like a place at a national leaders debate, you better behave yourself. You better conduct yourself with proper, observing proper etiquette, proper decorum, to maintain what they call a proper environment, right? So that everyone is treated with respect, and that you go in there with a reporter's mindset, like practicing true journalism, not activism journalism at that point. You need to detach yourself from that. But they instantly didn't do that, even though this is again my view, even though that truck is apparently funded by this third-party advocacy business or organization that Levant set up called For Canada, which he says it's separate from Rebel News, but he's over on Rebel News promoting it, encouraging people to donate to it, advertising for this other company that he has set up. That is, it looks pretty clear to me anyway that the two are connected, if for no other reason, the fact that he is directly connected to both. And now you have both at this venue. And he's saying that the reporters who are questioning this are getting their facts wrong. So this raises the question, is Rebel Media engaging in journalism or activism? What's your view?
I would say activism more than journalism. Activism.
Yeah, I would say so too. And at least on this level, in this instance, and as I've said the other night, like I have always, prior to this, I always treated them and viewed them as a legitimate media organization, news sort of organization, even though, Levant himself will tell you that they're not impartial, even though they seem to demand impartiality from legacy mainstream media. He himself does not practice that, and makes, doesn't hide the fact that he acknowledges his bias, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right?
Yes. Well, he's been around for a while, and I actually used a quote in this essay I'm working on. I'm calling the essay "Vast Wasteland," and in one of the sections of it, I include a quote, which really not about media or the press, but it was interesting. And here's the quote: "Behavior reflects personality. The best indicator of future violence is past violence. To understand the artist, you must study his art." And that quote comes from John Douglas in writing in a book called Mindhunter, which has nothing to do with media. It was about crime. But, there's a lot to study with Ezra Levant. He did 600 episodes of a show on Sun TV. That's just his show alone. And 3,000 in the last decade on Rebel News. So it's, there's a lot of material to collate, and there's no way anyone could go through all of it. But I remember a lot of it. I used to be a premium subscriber up until, the late summer of 2017. And since then, I watch their YouTube clips.
And the history of Sun TV itself shows how difficult it is for any media outlet to survive, because there you were with the same corporation behind Sun TV that owned the Sun newspaper chain at the time. They wanted access to cable outlets across Canada, but could not secure carriage on cable systems across the country, on enough of them to ensure that they had a wide enough audience on television at the time to make it financially viable to continue. So that's why Sun TV was ultimately, decommissioned, taken down, went out of business. The newspaper chain that owned them got rid of it because there was no money in it. They were losing money. And yet here we have Rebel Media that seems to be surviving, doing okay, even as they were deplatformed by social media platforms like YouTube, banned for a while, if I recall correctly. They were demonetized anyway. Did they ever lose their YouTube channel?
They were actually taken down for a week, and then they were back on. And well, in fact, Levant started a major campaign to buy his own app. They could have his own network, not just sort of piggyback onto YouTube or Google. They actually own their own app, which costs a ton of money.
So it's somehow
it's very expensive to produce television.
Oh yes, yeah. Especially if you have reporters in the field, if you have to pay staff, it takes a massive amount of money. It really does, to run even just a local or regional media operation. It's upwards of, these days, probably just a bare bones thing, just a regional operation. When I say regional, I mean like maybe a southern Ontario, southwest, the very bottom end of southern Ontario would cost probably $2 million a year to do it with actual staff and everything. And yet somehow, even in the face of all this opposition, Rebel Media always has survived. They, in fact, seem to thrive in the face of adversity and expand. And I'm not so sure that it's just because their numbers continue to grow. They have backing. They have backing of some kind coming from somewhere, yet we don't have full access to their financials, so we really don't know where the money comes from.
Well, some of it's coming from the oil companies, a lot from subscribers, a couple of the American sources.
Yeah,
you could kind of read between the lines sometimes, because they're always interviewing oil company executives.
Yes, that's very interesting. In fact, before we move on to the next point, which ties into what you're going to say, I just have this this decision back in 2021 when the debate commission did not allow Rebel Media into the leaders' debate. This is the last election. And the reason is given here by the debate commissioners, saying, quote, when an organization becomes an actor in the stories it tells, including providing and applying financial and legal assistance to some of its sources to work toward a desired outcome, or offering free legal services, crowd funds to help some individuals and stories, hire lawyers, which is a big thing that Rebel Media does, purchases political advertising, and launches petitions. Or when a reporter writes opinion pieces about subjects they also cover as journalists, endorses political candidates or causes, takes part in demonstrations, signs petitions, does public relations work, fundraises, and makes financial contributions. That's why they were not allowed into the debate back in 2021. But then there was this court case. Levant went to court, and there was a court ruling that said, regardless, you still have to give them access. And so Rebel secured access, but they didn't get credentials for just one journalist. They got like 5 in there. And I can tell you that as a reporter, even working for CTV when I did, if I went to an event like that, generally speaking, like, not maybe at a leaders debate, you might have multiples for like a larger production because you'd have a crew on site or something like that. But generally speaking, I went to G7 summits, economic summits. Like there was a big one in Detroit one year with world leaders there. I was the only guy that went, just me. And yet Rebel gets 5 reporters in and they get 4 questions and you have over 100 journalists in the room. That's because they found some way to, insert themselves in there. And I understand from my experience as being a reporter why other reporters would be a little bit upset about that, because they then did dominate, if you want to call it that, the Q&A. They weren't giving access to, they were I guess good for them, I guess, on the one hand, because they're so aggressive about getting in. On the other hand, you also want to be fair and provide some balance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, they're pushy, and then they fall back on free speech.
Yeah,
free speech. One of their arguments.
Yeah, we're the victim. We're being victimized. I'm not so I don't really view this one that way, because I think that there is a certain level of decorum that needs to be maintained. And as I say, it's not their right to be there. It's not the right of CBC to be there or anyone, because you're not there for you. You're there for the public, especially at an event like a national leaders debate.
Exactly.
So it's not about their free speech. It's about representing the public to ensure that people get access. And yeah, as a result of all of this, the scrum with the media at the end of it was ultimately canceled, which was a big blow for the public, because the public was not then, well, the leaders were basically let off the hook. They didn't have to answer questions from any media. And I just point blank reject this conspiracy that the mainstream media accomplished their goal of, like, I don't know, reverse psychology, upside down, whatever.
You think they should have allowed the scrum after the second debate to go on?
Well, the conspiracy that
even
I'm
though
hearing
Rebel might have been there with their 4 or 5 reporters.
Yeah, it was the plan all along for the legacy media. They got what they wanted. They wanted to shut it down. The legacy media is to blame, because then Carney didn't have to answer any questions. That's what the legacy media wanted to have happen. No. I can tell you right now that because I worked in media so long, that's the last thing any media outlet wanted. They want access to those leaders. They want to ask questions. That's like currency. That's worth money to all those media outlets, including the reporters, some of whom are there as stringers working for legacy media outlets, but are actually only freelancers. And they're only going to get paid in some cases if they can write their articles or do their broadcasts. And if that scrum doesn't go down, they might, they don't get the content. If you don't have the content, you don't get paid. If you don't get, you see what I'm saying? No, I'm sorry,
right.
But that's the last thing that they wanted to do. They didn't want that shut down.
Yeah.
So then we're also seeing that now I have to say, I think that the legacy media has to some degree overreacted to this. And because of their, I would say, overreaction, we're getting more and more attention focused on Rebel media, which I think is really ultimately the goal here in many cases with the way Rebel media behaves. It's not about covering the news. It's about making news, injecting yourself into the story so that you become the focus of attention. And that's exactly what happened here again with Rebel media. And when I say that, all you have to do is just look at all the headlines that have been circulating online ever since. And who became the center of attention at the event? Ezra Levant. All the cameras were turned on him as you had the exchanges and the arguments in the media room, and then he goes outside when they were ejected.
Yeah, they'll be milking that for a while yet, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. So he became the story. He wasn't covering the story, which is again why I would say he kind of violated the public trust simply by allowing himself and his reporters to become the center of attention and become the story. It's not unlike when you see somebody go to a rally or a speech for a politician, and they're in opposition to the politician, and so they stage what they call an intervention, where in the middle of the event they start to shout and scream to draw attention to themselves. You know.
Yeah.
Yes. Now here's a.
But anyway, the hands-off thing.
Yeah. Well, hang on. I don't want to get into that yet. I'm not
me.
done with this. I'm not quite done with this. I'm queuing up something here, Brian.
Okay.
There is this. I'll get you to comment on this guy too, if I can. Oh, so many clips. This is why. See, if you're low budget like we are, because we don't actually have $600,000 to spare, I'm producing on the fly while we talk. Now here's this. Okay, here we go. So this is what I was looking for. Ezra Levant, speaking of the history, and I know that you've been digging into his history here. Here's a story about Levant and his history with Pierre Poilievre. Oops, hang on. And again, I apologize. I have to bring you back up on the screen. Too many. It gets very difficult when you call in on the phone line here because I have to. It's a triple layer of production. Here we go. There it is. That's the one I was looking for. So now this is up on the screen so people can see through the proper channel. Okay, so Rebel Media, Ezra Levant was mentor to Pierre Poilievre. So this is a story that goes back to a time when Pierre Poilievre was in his early, just beginning his political career. And he was involved with the Conservative Party out in Calgary, where Ezra Levant at the time had secured the candidacy for the Conservative Party in this Calgary riding. And are you familiar with this story?
I vaguely remember that. I've got some notes about that. That's around 2002 or 2003, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And it could be a little bit earlier. And I always stepped aside to let Pierre Poilievre have the riding.
Right. So this story has bubbled to the surface again because for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's another historian, a political historian, Mark Bourrie. He's written a book that has just come out called Ripper, and it digs into the history of Pierre Poilievre, and there's a whole section in here about the relationship between Ezra Levant, Rebel Media, I guess, and Pierre Poilievre. And so Poilievre, and this was a volunteer on Ezra Levant's campaign. I think both of them were both back in their early 20s at the time. And so their history goes way back to working together, and it both of them, of course, tied right into the Conservative Party. Now,
well, now Ezra had been a strategist for Preston Manning for a while, moved over to Stockwell Day, and then through Stephen Harper. But there's one thing about Ezra you got to realize is that he simply couldn't play the game. Every person he worked for within a short period of time distanced themselves from him because he was such a muckraker. He became everything, overbearing, contemptible. And his connection with Pierre Poilievre was probably the same.
Yeah.
Until such a point he actually left Toronto and then went back out west to start his magazine. But he was sort of cruising through the whole neocon circuit in Toronto from the mid 90s through the early years of the millennium. So he met a lot of people. He was a political strategist. He wrote speeches. He wrote position papers, essays, articles. So I don't directly know the relationship between Levant and Poilievre at the time, but yeah, there was probably some sort of connection there in a way, with a political writing and a running for office. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, well, it is interesting to see the ties here because according to Burry, Poilievre was in his early 20s. He joined the conservative team that included Levant, and that was behind a push to have Stockwell Day, who was then at that time the new Canadian Alliance leader. That party had Western populist roots, and then that, of course, merged finally with the progressive conservatives again to reunite or unite the right. And I remember all of that going on at the time.
Yeah,
and
so
then
do I, yeah.
And then the Reform Party, which was founded under Preston Manning, right? That was all kind of folded all together. You got Reform and Alliance, and then they reunite with the conservatives. But mixed into all of that, of course, you have, I'd say, a lot of that pro-Western conservative base out there too. So that gets folded into this whole United Alberta base of conservative support. Levant and Poilievre, both to some degree part of that as well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, one of the first big stories Ezra Levant wrote about in Western Standard was based on a CBC series where they were going through who's the greatest Canadian, and it ended up being Tommy Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Levant may have been a little miffed that his guy, Ernest Manning, wasn't even one of the top 50.
Yeah.
So, which is why he's always been anti-Tommy Douglas, anti-socialism, anti-NDP.
Mm. Yeah. And then Stephen Harper, of course, interestingly, he actually pushed Levant aside and ended up taking that riding. He was the Canadian Alliance leader at that time, and then forced Levant aside, took that riding for himself in a by-election. And then, of course, Harper went on to become prime minister. Levant goes on, creates Rebel Media. Poilievre stays in politics, becomes a career politician, never really working in the private sector or anything, all the way along, working his way up the ladder with the Conservative Party, bringing a lot of that Western Canada, Alberta support, that base with him to propel him eventually into the leadership of the Conservative Party. So here we are, 25 some years later, Levant and Poilievre, they're crossing again here at the leadership debate, and they're kind of highlighting this crisscrossing. And I find it interesting, that truck has been circulating, wasn't just at the debate. They've been taking it to all these different political rallies. And I think maybe it was just becoming a little too obvious that there's this level of support, or maybe the support
is
too much.
Too. Yeah. It's a bit childish.
Yeah, well, the weird thing was that the Conservatives actually came out about a week ago at one of the Poilievre rallies and asked Levant to get the truck further away. I think it was just I don't really know what the politics was behind that internally, but but Levant actually put it on social media, the exchange he had with the local, one of the local security people there. It was a little bit weird.
But sometimes you have to look for things that are not there. Why hasn't Pierre Poilievre done an exclusive original interview on Rebel News?
I don't know. The other interesting thing is that this thing here pops up again, or not again, but this interview popped up. I believe this was on CNN. This is an interview that was done with a guy who used to work for Ezra Levant and some other, I guess, sort of right side political outlets, including InfoWars. This guy's name, what was his name again? I can't pronounce his name.
Kalen Robertson?
Kalen Robertson, yes.
The English guy, yeah.
Let me get this guy up here for you, and I'll just run this clip and listen to what he says about the way these so apparently independent, and I'll say right-wing media outlets operate, because keep in mind that they're not held to the same standard that other media outlets are held to that belong to, say, the Canadian Association of Journalists, where ethical standards are sort of upheld.
So you specialize in getting these far-right clips to go viral. So what was the formula that you found worked best?
Well, when I first started all this, I had been consuming radical content on YouTube for about 6 months. After the Orlando shooting, I remember I typed that theme into YouTube and was inundated with YouTube videos from Rebel Media and One American News Network type channels, and ended up going down that rabbit hole. I ended up becoming a correspondent for Rebel Media, of which I obtained millions of views. And my boss always told me, and the bosses of these other organizations always told me, that we should never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And if we can get people angry, and if we can get people upset, we can make more money, we can make more profit, and we can drive the algorithms to keep pushing these videos. It's what made me feel very disenfranchised and end up speaking out about it all in the end. But as someone who really believed in it and believed that, free speech was under attack and that the West was being invaded and all these ideas that they were pushing, I really felt that if I had to take part in disinformation and take part in bending the truth, that it was for the greater good. But actually my bosses and the people at the top of this ecosystem, from Newsmax and all these organizations, from Project Veritas, which collaborated with Rebel at the time, it was all fair game because the left were just so terrible. But actually, the kind of tactics that they were engaged in, and even myself now looking back were engaged in, were far worse than the quote-unquote liberal media and CNN and any of these groups ever took part in. It was completely devoid of any realism or any journalism. We would go to quote-unquote no-go zones in 2018 when Fox News would hype up that whole situation. And we would create conflict and then selectively edit it to look like those areas were far more dangerous than they were. Those videos would obtain millions and millions of views. Again, I regret that massively. The only reason I did it was because I was radicalized by those people and felt like it was for the greater good, and it was a bit of a cult. But those people profited massively from it, and it was always about pushing disinformation. Alex Jones, who I spent a lot of intimate time with, and a lot of the people that employed me, told me openly that they thought the whole Pizzagate stuff and the pedophile stuff and all the stuff that they were pushing is something that they don't really care about or really believe in. But it whips up their audience into anger, and it gets them to buy products on their newsnight.
Well, yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's. I'm not surprised. I kind of knew that all along. But yeah, to hear someone say it blatantly right out front like that, that's quite revealing. On how indie media, citizen journalism operates.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it citizen journalism. I'd call it, it's a particular kind of media
propaganda,
activism, or whatever. Anyway, let me take a little break here, Brian. I need to get something set up here so we can continue our conversation and segue into this protest that you went to. So hang on, folks. We'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So just before we leave the whole rebel media and election debate issue, I just want to come back here and just highlight that young man, Kalen Robertson, was involved. Well, his relationship with Levant really went south. Him and one other guy that they hired. I think you're familiar with that story as well. And
Yes, I am.
do you remember what that was about?
That was connected with the coverage of the English Defense League and Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, so it was in 2017. Kalen Robertson, who was at the time working as a UK correspondent for Rebel Media, and of course he was, I think, covering the Tommy Robinson stuff because they wanted someone kind of on the ground there in the UK that they could use as a go-to production guy, right? So he was doing camera work and stuff like that. Anyway, him, Robertson, and then this other guy, Llewellyn John. Yeah, they were fired or whatever at the time. The exact circumstances surrounding it all were never entirely clear, but they were accused by Levant of doxing and revealing.
Yeah, I remember some very fuzzy event.
Yeah.
Where they went into somewhere and there was, I don't know, maybe a blackmail scheme or something. And the thing about Ezra Levant, he talks about everything on his own show.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that incident where he went into this abandoned building into a dark room and met Kalen Robertson and someone else and conducted a payoff or a buyout package. It was all very, very furtive, very secretive, and pretty slimy. I felt at the time.
Well, at the time,
for someone like Levant to be caught up in, it's just
because Robertson accused Levant of offering him hush money, and he actually had and released at the time an audio recording, which did seem to back up to some degree his claims. Levant then turns around and says that it's not hush money; it was Robertson trying to blackmail him, and then released this video. Oh, hang on. I'm always over on the wrong darn thing when I'm on the phone system. It gets really complicated. So Levant, and again, I apologize for the production delays here. It just gets really complicated to bring this stuff up on the screen for you folks when I'm doing this. Okay. Here's what he said. This was in 2017.
I've had a rough week. No, it's not what you think. It's not because the liberal media is criticizing us for being too right-wing. That happens all the time. Something else happened to me for the first time in my life, actually, and I don't really know how to say it other than to just say it, and I can't really believe it, but here it goes. I'll say it. I'm being blackmailed. I'm being extorted. That's what's happening. I've always known the rule that if you're ever being blackmailed, don't pay. I mean, even if you think you can pay a blackmailer, they'll just ask you for more a second time. But you're scared, so you pay. I thought I could make the problem go away, so I actually paid, and then I paid again. But then they threatened again last night, actually, and then again this morning, so I haven't slept. So I called my lawyers this morning, and I've decided I'm done. I'm going to do what I should have done a few weeks ago and just pull the trigger on myself on my own terms. That's the only thing that takes that power away from an extortionist. It's a pretty bad choice, isn't it? So I'm going to take the power away from them, and I'm going to tell you what happened myself. It happened in the UK. Just a bit of background. As you know, we've got this great guy out there on our team, Tommy Robinson, smart, brave, tough. He used to be the head of the English Defense League. A rough group of guys. He even went to prison for a bit on a trumped-up charge just so police could take him off the streets. But Tommy actually quit the EDL, the organization he founded, when it started to become racist. Tommy hates racism. I've gotten to know Tommy and his best friend since childhood, Andre, who just happens to be black, for heaven's sakes. Tommy has an important story to tell about how Islam has changed his country, raped young girls, including his own cousin.
Okay, it really, the story involving Robertson, I don't think had or this Kalen Robertson, not Tommy Robinson. Kalen Robertson. I don't think it really has that much to do directly with Tommy Robinson himself, but there's this hush money stuff because of, I think, some of the stuff that he was talking about with that host on CNN. And then, there's the larger thing here that if you listen to Kalen Robertson, there's this whole issue of the ongoing fundraising, the huge amounts of money that Rebel raises. And I think he raises a valid point here that maybe people are not aware of because they're not reading the fine print, Brian, when they're looking at the terms upon which they are donating money. They have all these different causes, legal causes, et cetera, right? Donate to Free Tamara Litch, or donate to this, donate to that. And in the end, if they have what they would deem to be surplus funds, they use it for other operational costs. In other words,
and that was one reason why Lauren Southern decided to leave Rebel around early summer of 2017. That was a bad year for Ezra and Rebel when she left, because they were always going back and doing this Support Israel fundraiser when that little fundraiser had actually finished about 4 or 5 months earlier, and they were still promoting it. And she took offense at this double dipping, triple dipping.
Yeah, because listen to what he says here. He acknowledges actually this issue, this ongoing issue, I would say, where you may be donating to something that you think is a cause that they're promoting, but actually, if you read their terms of service, this is what you're donating to.
And our terms of service on our website are clear. Any surplus money is applied to other similar campaigns or related expenses. That's our whole business model. That's not a secret. That's our model. But Kalen and George threatened to say we were pocketing that money, that we were stealing money. I mean, of course, they had no evidence. They have nothing to do with our accounting department, which is in Canada. They don't have any facts. They just made it up. But so what? An accusation by a former employee would be deadly, especially with the liberal media so hungry to smear us these days.
Well, I don't know. If you have terms of service that basically say, even though if you're donating to, I don't know, Save the Dogs, and then you have a clause in there that says that you can use the funds for other things, like your operational expenses, isn't that really just like saying just donate to Rebel News?
Exactly. It's unethical. If I make a donation to Maverick News, and I'm making a donation to Maverick News, not to pay off your mortgage.
Yeah, or to, if you more to the point is if you're running a fundraiser for, I don't know, just pick a cause,
www.firefreeland.com.
Yeah,
was one of Rebel's ongoing campaigns.
One of their legal battles, right? To fund this legal battle to save, even Tommy Robinson, right? I think they had a fundraiser for him. But is all the money actually going to that?
It seems to be ongoing,
No, I think the terms of service make it pretty clear they can use the money pretty much for anything they want, as long as it's related to Rebel News and their operational costs, which if you read that tells me, maybe I hope this seems pretty clear to me, they can use it for wages, which is to say that it does go into the bank accounts of the people there, including probably Ezra Levant himself. He can do whatever he wants with that money.
Yeah, he could even buy a new transmission for his truck.
Yeah, and of course we don't get the financials, so there's not full transparency there. Now, I'm not saying that he's doing anything illegal at all. I'm not saying that, but it looks to me like the terms of service are pretty loose.
Yeah, but he has to pay his staff too, and David Menzies, for instance, lives and works in Toronto, and how much money do you need in order to survive in Toronto for a year? You're looking at 6 figures at least.
And that's okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with them paying their bills and having wages and surviving. That's not the issue. But if you have anybody running a fundraiser and you're telling them it's for this cause, but then in reality, you're taking a big portion of the money and allocating it to something else, like your general expenses. That to me, well, that's less than transparent. And I think then you're raising ethical questions, even if it is stated in your terms of service. It's me, you know, I never knew that. I personally didn't know, you know, and look at all the fundraisers they run for all these different causes.
Yeah, it's you eventually just get numbified by them after a while. Like every month, a new big fundraiser. WWW help David get out of jail, or fund Ezra's legal bills, or.
And you know, the other thing is, if you're running an operation where you need to raise funds, and you suddenly find yourself taking in a lot of donations, especially for legal battles, doesn't that sort of incentivize getting arrested?
Yeah, good point.
Just saying. It's a question. It's not. I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I'm not saying that's the motivation. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, well, if I was a field reporter like that, I would not be behaving like that at all.
Yeah. So.
Not in the slightest. I'd be delighted that I'd even be there. I'd be very deferential and courteous, and Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Carney, Mr. Singh, so on.
Yes, yeah, it's just what can I say?
And I'm not even working for a main media or representing a podcaster. But if I was just sort of a solo act podcaster, I would be behaving in a lot different manner than they are. But that's for 10 years now. That's what Rebel has done.
Yeah. And he says right there, he says that's their business model. And I have to tell you, Brian, I never, it's taken me a long time because I just was too trusting overall with Rebel. And when I say too trusting, I mean, I was just taking too much of it at face value because I'm the kind of person that it's like, you can be my friend until you give me a reason not to be. I'll trust you until you give me a reason not to trust you. So if I start to catch you in lies, then maybe I'm not going to trust you anymore. If I catch you, stabbing me in the back, maybe you won't be my friend so much anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And, so I don't go around looking for the bad in people or even organizations like Rebel Media. But here we have now a situation where I've just lost a lot of trust in them, especially with what happened at the debate. And as a result, I'm looking deeper into everything that they've been doing. And this is where this leads us tonight. And that's why I asked you to kind of share what you've been doing, because I know you've been talking about this work that you've been putting together over 3 months now. So what other aspects, or what really is the focus ultimately of the work you've been doing in this background work into Rebel Media for this essay you're writing?
Well, it's an expose of modern contemporary podcasting. The title I've called my essay is Vast Wasteland, and that actually is pulled from a famous quote 50, 60 years ago when an American, Newton Minow, who was leading the FCC at the time, was analyzing what was on American network TV, and it was just a wasteland of garbage and refuse. So I borrowed that phrase and dropped it into the modern journalism, podcasting, all the experts that are out there now. And if Newton Minow was alive today, he'd be turning over in his grave at all the crap that is coming out. There's, I don't know how many millions of podcasters out in America and hundreds of thousands in Canada, dispensing disastrous advice on matters of state policy, and none of them are qualified to comment on anything. Because unlike you, they have never been educated or trained. And they're just looking at the monitor beside their webcam, and they're reading scrolling up the article. And all of them are like that. And it's depressing. And with the state of a lot of television broadcast programs now in the universities and the print journalism courses, the literature courses, there's fewer and fewer people studying it. Why go to college for 2 years or 4 years in the university to study broadcasting if there's no broadcasting to go to? Because there's been budget cuts everywhere. CTV, Global, CBC, TV Ontario. The profession is declining. At the same time, the independents are multiplying. It's disheartening. And one of the little subsections in my essay, I'm calling it Rosebud. A reference to an old movie and William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah, Citizen Kane. Yeah.
So I've read a lot of books and researched famous authors, historical figures, military, literary, social. And what's the first thing you always go into? You read their unpublished letters, their books, their material. Where do you go when you cover a podcaster? Well, you look at the archive. The 600 shows Ezra did on Sun, the 3,000 he's done on Rebel, the 500 interviews he's done on American podcasters with Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, Megyn Kelly, Matt Walsh. That's the art, that I'm looking at for a personality podcaster. Referencing my earlier quote from John Douglas and Mindhunter, if you want to know about the artist, study the man's art. And that's what I've been doing to a certain degree, and rummaging through my memory of things I remember watching on Rebel or Sun TV from way back 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it's disheartening.
Well, the other thing that was interesting, another interesting aspect to the whole Rebel Media story, especially as it relates to the Kaylin Robertson episode, is in the end, we're probably never going to know all the details behind what transpired between Levant and Robertson and the dispute that they had and whatever kind of settlement happened. But the reason for that is that there was this high, I guess, sort of a powerful backroom guy who used to be the communications director for Prime Minister Stephen Harper, conservative. The guy's name's Corey Tenneke, I believe. He's the guy who sort of facilitated and put together the deal in the end that led to a settlement between Ezra Levant and Kaylin Robertson.
Yeah.
And so there was some sort of a financial settlement, and then I think they talk about the return of Rebel Media property, and I think what that meant was that they had to hand over all the video materials that they had shot. The exact terms of this, of course, never really made public, but this is where there were like legal threats, legal litigation that was potentially going to be ongoing for a long time, and it just ended all of that. So they parted ways. There was some sort of a financial settlement because you're dealing with a human resources employer-employee relationship, and probably an agreement that Robertson would stop talking about certain aspects of this story. But even today, you're seeing him pop up now in interviews. And Robertson has gone on to do some on-the-ground war correspondent work over in Ukraine. And his focus has shifted away from a lot of this sort of conservative-oriented media. So a big change there.
Yeah, well, that happened
just
about the same
very
time
interesting to
Space
see
Goldie
that.
went down to Charlottesville.
Yeah, very interesting to see the tie there, right? The strong tie between Ezra Levant, Rebel Media, and the Conservative Party, especially, I think in particular, the Conservative machine out in Alberta.
Right.
It just reinforces all of that, and I highlight all this here tonight, not because I'm trying to hammer on Rebel Media so much, but I just think the public deserves to know context. They need some degree of transparency to understand what it is they're really watching. And the only way to really understand what you're watching is to really know the source and the motivations behind that source. And is the information that's being shared with you, is it coming from a neutral source, an unbiased source, a source that's receiving funding from someone? Are they connected to a political machine of some kind? Is there a political agenda behind what they're talking about? Well, certainly, I think that the part of the political agenda seems to be on display, not so much in who they're supporting, but who they're not supporting, with that truck running around with the anti-liberal, anti-Carney campaign. And that's translating into an obvious bias in their reporting as well, their reportage.
Yeah, well, and a general support for Donald Trump and MAGA.
Yeah.
Which is what first inspired me to start researching Ezra Levant and Rebel.
Yeah.
I thought this guy was supposed to be Mr. Canada, Mr. Patriot, Mr. True North, strong and free, and I don't get it. Why is he, supporting someone like Donald Trump? Why is he promoting Canada as the 51st state?
Yes. Now I think you're really hitting the nail on the head. It's there's a real support there, isn't there? I mean, it's just blatantly obvious. They're coming right out and saying it now. I mean, they are platforming and I would say even supporting this whole notion of Alberta separation and or Canada becoming the 51st state. That's the Rebel News position. And yet they sit there and wrap themselves in the Canadian flag, saying nobody has done more for Canada than some of these people who are actually advocating for the breakup of the country. It's like oxymoronic.
Now, didn't Poilievre say something during the debate the other night? I'd have to go back and listen to it, where he said that maybe Canada needs a variation of Doge.
Yes.
I'd have to go back and listen to it verbatim.
Yeah.
He made some oblique reference to that. Yeah, that's pretty chilling.
Yeah, I especially when you see the way it's being rolled out in the United States. I think the last thing we need here is a Canadian version of Elon Musk going and taking a flamethrower to every government department and purging thousands of employees, only to have to hire most or a lot of them back in some departments because they're getting it wrong, causing all kinds of problems. And it's pretty clear to me that down in the United States, the whole Doge exercise is about purging political opponents or anyone that has wrong think. If you don't think the right way, if you don't support the right political party and have the right ideas, then you're fired. It's the Department of Getting Even, not the Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, I hear commentators in the States talk about the 17th Amendment or the First Amendment or the 10th Amendment, and I don't know whether American democracy can survive 4 years. I hope they can.
Me too.
I hope we could survive some of the flack we're getting from it. I really hope we can.
And yet, you look at what's happened in just 100 days. I see that Trump has just deported some other teenager with no criminal record. Sent this young person. I don't have all the details in front of me, but another person sent to El Salvador to this prison where it's basically a life sentence, but apparently no criminal record, according to the media reports that have come out so far. So there are some questions there that I want to have answered to see if this is possibly a violation of someone's rights and maybe a huge mistake that has possibly destroyed another life.
So, yeah, apparently that place in Salvador, it's a real hellhole, and not too many know much about it. It can hold 40,000, I think they said. It's a whole series of pavilions in one remote area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all very dark.
Yeah, and
they
then
just kidnap people on the streets, and there was one student in NYU or whatever was walking home from class and crossing the street at a crosswalk, and all of a sudden 5 or 6 Gestapo type figures apprehended her, and she was sent off to maybe Salvador, or maybe sent back to Lebanon or wherever the country of origin might have been.
Yeah, and then we're talking a lot here really about because the election is on here in Canada, we're seeing, I would say, information warfare ramped right up with different influences coming to bear. And down in the US, of course, this is an ongoing problem. And yet, something I said the other night is, well, people are concerned about censorship. We also have to be careful not to leave ourselves completely defenseless in the face of this onslaught of really, I would say, international efforts to shape narrative, manipulate public opinion through information warfare campaigns. And yet, what are we seeing from the State Department this week? We're seeing exactly the opposite, with the State Department saying that they're actually shutting down the State Department's Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Department, which was formerly known as the Global Engagement Center. It's about a $50 million a year operation, and they're just shutting it down simply because I'm not sure why. Other than to try to save $50 million or maybe some other agenda. But this basically was aimed at combating Russian propaganda. And, propaganda is nothing new, nor is it free speech, in my view. Here's Ben over at Midas Touch talking about it, and then I'll get you to comment on it, Brian.
Absolutely ridiculous. And speaking of absolutely ridiculous, on Easter, here's the headline from Politico: Bonkers crazy pants. American diplomats shaken by reports of new State Department cuts. Purported executive order by Donald Trump, which is going to be released this week, calls for slashing State Department offices and bureaus, overhauling how diplomatic posts work, getting rid of all of these diplomatic outposts that promote democracy in Africa and Europe and elsewhere. One U.S. diplomat described the draft to Politico as bonkers crazy pants. You could give infinite monkeys infinite typewriters, and they would come up with something better than that. And this follows the State Department shutting down its foreign offices to block Russian disinformation because Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in an actual release, this is real, says protecting and championing free speech at the State Department, that Russia's disinformation campaign in the U.S. is a form of free speech that should be promoted. That's in his release right there. There you have it. Trump's Easter. We'll keep you posted with more here on the Midas Touch Network.
Oh dear.
I don't think they get it. Or maybe they do. Maybe that's the larger problem. Propaganda is not free speech. Not in my book.
Well, our mutual friend, Remy John, once asked me a couple of weeks ago that, Bri, name all the good things Trump did so far. And well, I don't know. Let me see. Let me check. I better research it. And then the only thing I can come up with is his golf game is probably getting better.
Well,
but on the list, he started a trade war with Canada and Mexico. He's conducting ethnic cleansing in Palestine. He's allowing Musk to hack the Treasury, the Department of Labor, Education, Medicare, Social Security. He's gutted Meals on Wheels and food stamps. He's messing around with the power grid. He's picked an unnecessary fight with the trans community, eliminating unemployment insurance, and initiated plans to close down NPR and PBS. Oh, it just goes on and on. It's just every day, and this is all within 100 days.
Yeah, amazing. Well,
and then we get a little bit of that fallout crossing our border into Canada, and Trump wants to take out his magic marker and rewrite the border. Another 300 or 400 miles north of where it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for all of this tonight, Brian. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on or think that might be missing? I have to move on here because we got to get to John, actually, because he's been working on another story about the bankruptcy of Hudson's Bay in Canada. But I'll throw it back to you for a final thought.
Well, according to the clips I've watched online, the hands-off rallies across America were a huge success. And there were a number of them in Canada. And my teeny tiny little demo here in Kingston, I was the only person that showed up for it, and I ended up in the middle of a Palestinian protest. And well, there was no problems. They allowed me to do my little thing, and as long as you treat them right, it's okay. But I did what I could. My campaign. I would love to have impeachment of Trump.
Hang on a second here. I think I actually
of
have
LGBT rights and everything. I want to preserve the U.S. and as well as the Canadian Constitution, and I'd like to go back to the way it was. To use your famous line, the before times.
Yeah,
but, it's going to be a 4-year struggle to get through this.
Yeah. And here, actually, I do have a shot of the protest that you went to, and maybe you can just talk a little bit more about it. And I believe...
Yeah, that was, it didn't turn into a turf war. It only happened to me once before where a couple of movement groups were trying to do something, and they both claimed the spot. But yeah, they decided to do their little protest in front of Mark Gerritson's constituency office, and it's okay. There were 30 or 40 of them. I kind of had my little hands-off sign, and there was no problem. I walked back and forth and across the street this way and that, and they had stopped traffic coming in both directions, and while one car turned around, the guy gunned it in reverse and knocked over a couple of them, and then peeled off rubber in the opposite direction. That was the only tense moment there.
Now, I have to say that, we have seen at times these pro-Palestinian protests turn into situations where they're restricting access. They're not inclusive. They only speak to certain reporters. They reject, even Dragon, up in Montreal at times, he was told, we're not going to talk to you, or, those kinds of situations, or they occupy classrooms or offices at university campuses, which to me, crosses a line. But you found that in this particular case up there in Kingston, they were friendly and welcoming to you?
Yeah, well, I wasn't pushing them the way like a Rebel News reporter might. I was there to participate in my little one-off thing on my own, and it was public space anyway. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
But I've been in places like Tim Hortons, where a group of 15 or 20 Palestinians march in and do their From the River to the Sea and gas the Jews, and which is really horrible. And then they march into the library or the city hall or a hockey rink, and they do their sit-down demo. It's, there's a time and a place for everything, and they've taken their protests too far. And interesting article I just read last week. someone who called into question is Deborah Lipstat's article online. Why she won't accept a teaching position at Columbia University because of how the administrators are coddling the Palestinian radicals, the Hamas elements, chanting gas to Jews, the Holocaust has been faked. It's reprehensible.
Yeah. So, obviously, because we do believe in free speech here, we support everyone's right to protest. But as we keep saying, there are always limits to free speech because everyone has rights, and you can't start to violate other people's rights in order to have a free-for-all. And there are certainly lines that should not be crossed. So I'm glad that you had a positive experience yesterday with this protest that you went to, and hopefully that kind of discourse continues.
Yeah, it feels like we're in Alice in Wonderland. Happy Easter. I guess I can listen to White Rabbit now.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for doing all this tonight. It was a great conversation. I appreciate all the work you're doing, and when you get that essay and research
I
done,
fired off a copy to you. So
and then we'll maybe highlight that more and let people know what the cumulative effect and the end result of your research efforts ultimately end up being. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay.
Thanks for the phone call. Appreciate it.
All right, and we will be right back, folks, and I'll try to get John out in Alberta on with us so we can talk about the bankruptcy story of Hudson's Bay Company.
Someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching.
The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Oops, hang on a second here, John. Let me get this screen set up properly here. We're going to bring you on live now, and here we are. John from out in Alberta land. Welcome back, sir.
Well, good evening, Rimby John, Alberta side, and happy Easter weekend. Happy Easter Sunday. And tomorrow's Easter Monday, right, Rick? It's a holiday, right?
Boy, I think so. I can't keep my holidays straight, man.
Well,
I think it depends if you're a banker.
Well, yeah, I'm a good old Christian, but I mean, there was Good Friday, and then it rolls into Good Sunday, and then Easter Monday, because I don't think there's any school for kids tomorrow with my friends. I think tomorrow's a holiday too. It's a banking holiday too.
Yeah, it depends on where you are, right? It's one of those things where it's not like a federal holiday. It depends on the country. Depends on, I think that it depends even on the province you're in. Because I think like here in Ontario it is, but I can't keep it all straight, John, quite honestly. But that's why the Easter egg roll is tomorrow, because it's
Oh, I see. Oh,
at the White House.
You mean at the White House?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a little scary, Rickster. The orange orangutan, Mr. Captain Chaos. Can you imagine them letting him loose at the Easter egg hunt?
Yeah.
With the Easter bunny?
He's so competitive, he probably will tackle the little kids and steal other eggs, because
No, he'll be holding. No, he'll have ICE and the sheriff and the Secret Service there holding the Easter egg bunny's hands in the air that he or she's under arrest of being deported. That's a joke, people. That's a joke. If anybody doesn't get that, don't hate me. Joke. Yeah. Oh, nobody get a sense of humor anymore.
Oh man. Oh well, I mean, just about everything was closed in my neck of the woods here. All the malls closed, all the grocery stores, as I told you in our conversation earlier today. But you were out at the mall in your neck of the woods. Tell people what city you're in. Tell people what happened at the mall there the other day as you were making the rounds and came across what was happening at the Hudson's Bay stores out there.
Well, at the brief moment, I'm in Calgary in oil business, but I'm one of the originals. I'm actually born and raised in Calgary, and it's a pretty influential middle upper end mall. It's called Market Mall in Northwest Calgary. Of course, I think there's 4 Bay stores in Calgary. There's Market Mall Northwest, downtown, I think Chinook and South Center. But yeah, so the Hudson Bay at Market Mall, Rick, it's a pretty middle upper class influential neighborhood right next door to the Children's Hospital and the Calgary University. And of course, I sent you the pictures. It's the closeout sale, the bankruptcy, and it's going to be I worked in the mall when I was a teenager. It's pretty devastating, Rick. It's going to be very devastating for the community in Northwest Calgary. It's sad. And I know a bunch of people there. I got to give a shout out to my guys with Stan up in the menswear department and in Hugo Boss and Polo. And it's sad, Rick. A lot of people are going to be out of work.
Well, it is a shake up in the Canadian retail industry. The Hudson's Bay Company, founded in 1670. It is undergoing this historic collapse, and the chain, known for it's those Hudson's Bay striped blankets. It began liquidating most of its stores and filing for creditor protection. I don't remember exactly when that was. I think it was a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
back in March.
Around about a month ago, maybe, ballpark is.
Saying they couldn't pay their debts. And I guess they're attributing this largely to the pandemic and downturn in their sales, rising inflation, U.S.-Canada trade tensions, including these new tariffs, disrupting financing efforts to try to keep the company afloat. 80 stores across the country, including 3 Saks Fifth Avenue locations and 13 Saks Off Fifth stores. They owe, get this, man. Did you know, man, that they owe creditors like over $1 billion?
No, is that U.S. or Canadian? Irrelevant. I'm going back in a little bit of history, but Hudson Bay, did they not refinance everything like maybe 5-10 years ago? Like this is the 3rd or 4th kick at the cat on rejuggling the company, and it just unfortunately it's sad. It just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, they kind of had that coming together of the Bay and Saks, which at the time I thought not a bad strategy, because Saks is an upscale brand for a retailer, right? Could fly maybe in Canada, but then things just haven't worked out. They're also connected to, they tried to resurrect about a year ago, Zeller's brand, the Zeller's discount retail chain, right?
which is contained within Hudson Bay.
Yeah.
That was a remarketing strategy that I think it worked for a month or so, but didn't
work again. That was, I guess, ill-conceived, or maybe not researched well enough, or maybe Canada's just the retail market is just so dominated by Walmart and a handful of other stores. Everybody else pulls up the rear in terms of retail. Like here we have Hart department stores in Ontario. I think they're in some other places, Giant Tiger, but they're all like kind of just five and dime style stores. It's just a step above, a step above a dollar store. Of course, sort of lower quality brands. And, it's very difficult, I'd say, in the Canadian retail environment right now to maintain a bricks and mortar upscale retail operation, especially in shopping malls where overhead is just so high.
Well, and Rick, the other thing, I'm out of Rimby, but the Hudson Bay and Red Deer, it's a major anchor to the mall. But I think the signs have been that the cracks in the armor have been there for quite a while, and this is not a cheap store to shop in, Rick, Hudson Bay.
And look at here, you sent these photos in, and you can see they still have Christmas tree things out for sale, 60% off, not selling. Very few people that I'm seeing in these photos that you're sending in, not very many people on the store floors.
Well, one of the issues, Rick, I think allegedly during the pandemic, they made a corporate choice, Hudson Bay President's Office, to not pay rent. And I think that was across Canada. And let's not forget,
what was that,
Rick? Those were the stories. I think is the President's Office of Hudson Bay during the lockdown pandemic decided not to pay rent across Canada at a lot of these different malls. And let's not forget, they had a pretty substantial real estate portfolio. Like I think in Edmonton, like the Hudson Bay in downtown Calgary, it's a monstrous historical building. I think that they own, I think they own the property there. And I think they own many other properties, but I think that's been liquidated a while ago. And that's allegedly, I'm not, right up to speed on that, but they were never on the cheap side, Rick, Hudson Bay.
You're quite right. I'm just looking it up here, and there was a decision to defer rent payments to landlords, and that's because of their need to seek protection from creditors under the Creditors Agreement Act. And they were $5 million behind on rent and supplier payments. So in order to just maintain operations and go through the liquidation process and maybe try to find a buyer or someone to bail them out, you're quite right. There was this situation, which, and I think an agreement even put in place where they wouldn't pay rent. So the deferring rent, no doubt some agreement in place so that whatever is accumulated or generated through the liquidation of the assets through these closeout sales, a portion of that will go to the
Rick,
renters.
With all comments aside, Hudson's Bay and Market Mall, it's owned by Cadillac Fairview, is the owner landlord, and they without pooping on them, they've not been very nice to people during the lockdown and the pandemic. The rents that these, and it doesn't matter with Hudson Bay, or the rents that these business owners, and you can be Toys R Us, you can be whatever, whether it's in the food court or whatever, the rents that these people are paying, Rick, it's outrageous. It's beyond outrageous. And then they want to take so much of the gross, of your sales and
Well, it depends on the lease agreements in each of the individual, outlets, of course, and all these retail mall operations. The property owners, the landlords, they're sitting on what was once farmland, usually in these communities, that they then turn into the highest priced real estate in the community, charging triple net leases. And that's why, you know, this announcement came back last month from Hudson Bay that it couldn't pay its debts because of a massive drop in sales. They said that in these court documents that they realized a 33% sales drop in 2024. E-commerce sales plummeted additionally, excuse me, nearly half, 50%. And yet you would think that online sales would increase during the pandemic, but it did not for Hudson's Bay. So liquidation sales started on March 24th at all but 6 stores. And what are you seeing out there in Calgary? What are the sale prices like, the liquidation prices?
Well, I think, Rick, one of the side issues there that nobody really wants to talk about is, you know, your brick and mortar retail, whether it's J.C. Penney or a Macy's or whatever. I think it's been declining for several years because of internet buying. But I'm a proud, caring. I'm an old dinosaur, and I like to feel, touch, taste it. I like to go in and look at the goods. I don't buy anything online. I've had friends buy online, and they're like me, triple X, and they buy online, and it arrives, Rick. And the guy's a 250-pounder rancher in Alberta. He can't even get his arm in the, you know, in the shirt sleeve because it was fitted by a 98-pound person from China. You know, like, you know. So I just love to. I love the old-fashioned retail, but I think the time has come and gone. I don't know. What do you think?
Retail, bricks and mortar retail, the way that we've become used to it, yeah, I think it's pretty much at the end of its life cycle. And there are so many reasons for that. I mean, if you're trying to maintain some sort of an online bricks and mortars presence, you have such high overhead that it's almost impossible, I think, to compete these days, because you have not just the rent, but you have your utilities, heating the place in the winter, maintenance of the building on a building that is generally leased, not owned. And you're seeing more and more, you know, commerce happening online, of course. And so that's cutting into sales. As a result, yeah, I think you've got huge challenges, not the least of which is shoplifting, which is a huge issue for retailers. They call it shrinkage. So how do you cope with that? I mean, in today's environment?
Well, and I can tell you that's become very bad at Market Mall. There have been a couple of retailers right inside the mall, inside of Starbucks and Cinnabon, that got you know, hit in broad daylight, men's and ladies wear store for tens of thousands of dollars on a, you know, it was literally an 25-second snatch and grab by probably 10 teenagers, in the door and out within probably 35 seconds. And before anybody could react, of course, you know, they're gone. And, you know, that hurts everybody too.
Yeah.
That hurts everybody too.
Yeah. So I know that they have, I think, 6 locations that are not going through the liquidation process at this point. They're spared for the moment because, believe it or not, they're still trying to find some sort of a lifeline to keep the company alive in some way. Now that could stretch on all the way into June, with some of those stores closing by June 30th. And online sales are continuing with thebay.com, at least for the moment, I think. Now that may have come to a close as well. I'm just not sure. But yeah, they're still trying to find some way to find some investor or someone to come in and save maybe at least a half a dozen of these locations.
Well, they're also, Rick, if you note in the pictures I sent you, they're no longer accepting prepaid gift cards after April the 6th of 2025. If you had $1,000 gift card your wife had given you, that's gone. You know, you can't redeem that on even merchandise.
And this is a big hit to the Canadian economy, especially in the retail sector, because you're looking at over 9,300 jobs on the line here. all these employees going to be in the unemployment line. And I think this is the biggest, well, it is, it's the biggest retail decline, the biggest retail layoff since Sears closed all of its stores in Canada.
Well, I was going to say, you just brought me to my next point was we had a next door neighbor in Calgary, Gail Youngblood, God love her. She worked at Simpson Sears and North Hill Mall for like her entire life. And it's still the anchor, part of North Hill. They've still got the Sears sign up, but a family took over the space and it's, selling furniture out of there. But I mean, that was another major blow was Simpson Sears. And that's got to be what, about 25 years ago, Rick?
Mm-hmm.
Sears went down?
Sears, yeah. It's got to be at least that, yeah.
Hey, Rick, your dad and me, and my dad, I miss the Craftsman tools, Rick. That have the lifetime warranty on them forever.
Actually,
Craftsman tools.
That's interesting, because you can get Craftsman tools. Rona, which is a Canadian hardware retailer and lumber outlet, they've picked up the Craftsman name brand. So you can go in there and buy Craftsman tools. They still have that. And I think they sell them through some other outlets as well. So the brand is still out there, Craftsman.
No, okay.
Yeah.
But I
not
mean,
through
Rick,
your stores.
I'll just tell you on a side note. I mean, I work hard for the money. I work 6 days a week. I've always been a polo guy. And I mean, I would look at a men's shirt at Hudson Bay at Market Mall here, and the price on it was $125. And yet out of Leduc, Alberta, which is just south of Edmonton, they have something called the Premier Outlet Mall. And there's actually a polo store in there. And I would buy $125 shirts at Leduc Polo Store for $22.50 tax all in on the discount racks after the family discount with your email discount. So I would walk out of there with 5 shirts compared to one I would buy in Calgary. And I'm driven by price, it's just a sign of the times, my friend, I think.
And from the photos you've sent in tonight, it looks like the markdowns are only generally around 30% at this point. So they're still in the early stages of the liquidation. No doubt if this continues and they don't find a lifeline to save all of these stores, and it looks like maybe they'll only save maybe 6 if they're lucky.
Actually, no, the discount pricing is 30 to 60%, but you don't get my attention until it's kind of 75%. But I mean, everything's, you can see by the pictures, it's already been picked over, big time.
Yeah, well, you can see here that, the 60% seems to apply to things like Christmas decorations, which they're still having trouble getting rid of, at least in these photos that I'm seeing from you. Now, I do know as well that I guess there's a Chinese billionaire, Wai Hong Lu, who is trying to buy some of these stores to make the Bay great again.
Well, the only thing, Rick, I can say in Red Deer is the Bay there, like a lot of times, and that they're the major anchor there at Bauer Mall. A lot of times, Rick, there were more staff working than there were customers in the store.
Yeah, I can see from the photos that's the case, yeah.
They sell furniture. I mean, people don't realize, I think, maybe how diverse the Bay has become. But I mean, they're pretty well into a lot of stuff. But I just found a lot of it. But I'm a flea market guy. Brian Held will tell you out of Morseburg. I'm a flea market antique guy. I shop at thrift stores and whatever. I'm driven by the dollar. I'm driven by quality. And at my age now, Rick, it's against my religion to pay full retail. I'm beyond it. I don't pay retail anymore. I just don't.
Well, Wai Hong Lu is a Chinese-born entrepreneur. And just for the record, I think I misspoke because Wai Hong Lu is actually a woman, chairwoman of a company called Central Walk. And they own 3 big British Columbia shopping malls, and they've expressed some interest in acquiring some of these Hudson's Bay stores. Hard to say where all that might go. But now we're looking at, with I think they're around 30% off across the board, and then up to 60% if you want a Christmas tree.
But but Rick, here's the other thing too. A lot of people don't realize, maybe, and if anybody can relate to this, it's our friends in the United States with liquidation places, whatever. A lot of these Hudson Bays, well, like Sears, Roebuck, and whatever, these are massive retail properties of thousands and thousands of square feet. And if you don't have the foot traffic coming in, I mean, the square footage at a lot of these Hudson's Bay are, I mean, the one I'm thinking at Market Mall, it's got to be like, it's a 2-floor. I sent you outside shots of the building. It's a 2-floor. It's probably, Rick, I don't know, 30,000 square feet. I mean, we're not talking 1,000 square feet here. We're talking, most Hudson Bays are pretty massive stores. I know the ones in Edmonton most of them are 2 floors.
Yeah. Well, when you have people like Jeff Bezos flying around in spaceships because of all the money that's been generated through online retailers like Amazon, you can see how things have changed. Obviously,
well,
the guys
and I mean,
made massive amounts of money through e-commerce.
But I mean,
guys
Rick,
if
you look at my pictures from Hudson Bay and Market Mall, Northwest Calgary, Alberta, Canada, they're selling everything, Rick. Like the Chanel station, the tables, the chairs, the mannequins. I mean, if it ain't nailed down, it's all for sale at some point, because they're going to have to vacate. That space is going to have to be empty when they vacate it.
Yeah, there's somebody buying a mattress. I see they're picking that up, and and hard.
Oh,
like,
I laughed at.
There's somebody.
I
there.
laughed at them, Rick. It took like 7 of them to put the mattress on the van and tie it down. I said, "You just need an old grain farmer like Rimby John. We'll get her lapped down there in about 2 seconds." And they played around with that for about an hour. But anyways.
Oh man,
it's just a sad state of kind of weird thing. And the other thing is Rick and Maverick, people just don't have the throwaway money to be paying full retail like this anymore. They don't.
Yeah, there are some rich people out there still, but in Canada, the average person, everybody's just scrimping and economizing. So yeah, there isn't the discretionary income out there. Although I have to say, I just found out yesterday that a ticket for one of the playoff games, like whatever you're going to see, some people are paying upwards of like $5,000 for an NHL playoff game for a ticket to a game. That to me is insane. Would you pay that, John, to go to a hockey game?
No. I work too hard for the money. If I got that extra money to throw around, it's being donated to the food bank or homeless or a charity or something where your hard-earned dollars are gonna help some other people. Because I just have a belief in life with my friends. Give and give and give until you can't give anymore, and then give some more. That's how you become successful, is giving to others. It's not all about materialistic clothing or cars, or it applies to a lot of stuff.
Well, since I have no money, it certainly isn't a materialistic thing for me.
Well, I'll tell you, people on the line here from the States or Maverick News, I mean, come to the West Edmonton Mall, which used to be the largest mall in North America, built by the Ghermezian brothers in the 80s. And if you want to talk about full retail on steroids, it is absolutely 10 times more expensive than the Hudson Bay. If you love walking around paying full retail, and that's against my religion. I'm beyond that. I was one of those people at one time. I have to admit, begrudgingly. Like, I got to admit, I like Sleepy Joe Biden, Bolshevik ice cream guy back in the White House, but it ain't going to happen.
I looked like a complete slob yesterday because I went to my parents for Easter dinner, and I got dressed in the morning in the dark, and I pulled this shirt out of my drawer, didn't really look at it, t-shirt, Maverick News t-shirt, actually, like the one I've got on here underneath this.
Is mine in the mail?
It certainly is. I'm happy to send. Just send me your address, man. I keep telling you, you haven't sent me your address. Anyway, I'll send you the shirt. But this is what happened to me yesterday. So I was walking around like all day, and then I'm at my parents', and I didn't realize it, but there was like a hole in the shirt, like right here in the neck. It was like a hole, like just like that, and it was all shredded. And of course, I didn't even know because, and like I'm sitting there having Easter brunch, and then my wife says, you got to change your shirt. What are you talking about? Because I've got a hole. Because Cosmo, my dog.
I was gonna say, did Cosmo chew your shirt
Yes.
off? Well, Rick, I'm just thank the good Lord above, Maverick News family. You showed up with pants on. Last time you said your wife had hid your pants.
Oh,
you didn't find them for 2 hours.
Yeah, I couldn't find my pants. I wanted these specific pants. I couldn't find my stupid pants. Anyway, it's all fine now.
Well, Rickster, your wife needs to take better care of you and lay your clothes out the night before like a little boy going to school, So your outfit is laid out there, your socks, underwear, pants, t-shirt,
Oh, man. Yeah, what do they call that? A wardrobe malfunction? Well, that was a disaster.
No, Joan Rivers, the late comedian who I love to death. No, she called it being organized.
Yeah, if I'm not, missing my pants, I'm walking around with giant holes in my shirt, unwittingly.
No, kidding aside, Joan Rivers, the late comedian, she had a special guy that came in 3 times a year and laid out all her outfits with jewelry, the whole bit, and rehung them. And maybe that's what we need to do for you, Rick, if you're dressing in the morning in the dark, so you're presentable.
Someday
you're the Maverick News owner. You got to be presentable.
Oh yeah, I mean, big time media mogul. If we ever have a budget. Anyway, John, thank you so much. Just one last thing. Have you been to the grocery store lately? Since we're talking about
I have them there
retail.
every other day. Yeah, and hit me with it. Safeway, Giant Tiger, No Frills, President's Choice, Sobeys. Hit me. What? Hit me. What do you want to know?
Have you noticed the price of eggs here in Canada? What are eggs costing out there?
Well, I know. I actually was really surprised the other day at Safeway to see they had a couple of eggs that are 50% off, but a dozen, I think, regular or large eggs were $4.19. I think they were regular eggs, $4.19 for 12 eggs, and you can still get 30 eggs at Safeway for $10.39.
Okay, so I'm going to compare the price of
30 eggs at Safeway, and I think they were regular, and I think $10.39 for 30 eggs. Yeah.
All right, so let's
Still
take a look.
really
Since
reasonable.
Since it's Easter and we're talking about the Easter egg roll.
Yeah,
and we're also have all these people talking about Canada joining the 51st as the 51st state, blah, 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 blah. And people are like, Alberta should join the United States, blah, blah, blah. Okay, because we're going to be so much better off. Okay, so here's the price of eggs, grade A large egg at Kroger grocery stores in Michigan. $4.49 US. So what is $4.49?
But they're large, you said.
Yeah, they're large. So what's that in Canadian dollars? That's $6.21 for a dozen eggs, Canadian.
Okay, and in fairness, I think it's Safeway in Calgary. If you had large eggs, they would probably be $4.59 Canadian, which is like, well, it's under $4 American, right?
Let's do a price check. Canadian superstores, which is
$4.59 Canadian Safeway large eggs, and that's 12.
Okay, so we're well over $6 a dozen on the U.S. side, Canadian. All right, converted. So let's go to Superstore Canada. What do we have here? This is just on the fly. Large grade A eggs, $3.93 Canadian. So
okay.
be careful what you ask for, Kanakistanians.
Well, the other thing too is, Rick, there's a vast difference between the United, and no disrespect to my friends and relatives in the United States, there's a big difference between the United States of America, their dairy system, their quality, and Canadian. And I think without question, the Canadian dairy system of quality is probably much more stringent and tight. And I would put probably the Canadian dairy industry at a Duesenberg level, and probably United States of America at maybe well, I don't know, an Oldsmobile. Is that unfair, Rick?
What, you think the Canadian standards are lower than the U.S. standards for egg
No,
production?
the Canadian standards are Duesenberg.
Oh, Duesenberg.
The Canadian is
well,
way
you can't
above,
do better than a Duesenberg.
way far and above the standards, and that goes with our cheese, our milk, our sour cream, our cottage cheese, our margarine, our butter. Or am I off base with that, Rick?
No, I think that our dairy and egg standards, I think they're stellar, like top of the line, best in the world here in Kanakistania. Yeah, because you see here, like we have these like, nature egg omega-3 white eggs. So you get the omega-3s here for still less money than you would pay on the US side for just a standard egg that comes from a chicken that's held in a cage and force-fed grain all day. Right?
Well, Rich, here's
yeah.
what gets me is I'm from the farm. I like eggs and bacon and pancakes, whatever. There's your regular, your regular egg in Canada, US. Then they've got something called a free range, there, Richter. And then there's this organic.
Yeah.
What? And the organic are twice the price of a free range.
Well, because if they feed them certain food, they have the omega-3 fatty acids in them. It's supposed to be better for your heart. And that's why all us poor folks who buy the cheap eggs die much earlier, because we're all croaking like frogs instead of clucking like chickens into our old age.
Yeah, there's something called free range. It's called the orange orangutan in the White House. That's free range.
Yeah, well, they apparently have an egg shortage down there because of the bird flu, which has resulted in a government cull of millions and millions of chickens down there in the US of A. And that's one of the reasons the price of eggs has increased so much down there. We've seen a bit of a price increase here too, but nothing like that. So folks, like I say, hey, all you Kanakistanians, be careful what you ask for. If you become part of the 51st state, look what you're going to be paying for eggs. And that was just me on the fly, not a preconceived or a setup of any kind here to highlight some inconvenient truth. But that's an inconvenient truth for all the people who want to blow our country apart so we can join the US of A.
Well, Rick, as a side note, I did send you a text on it. You ran the other night, and the first one you did was your Orange Orangutan song, which is that's a #1 hit. The second one was Captain Chaos, the Orange Orangutan, behind the Resolute desk with the Cheetos, and then the hairdresser putting the orange paint on. Then you ran the next one with eyeliner, Elon, or JD Vance in the bed with Trump, putting eyeliner on his boyfriend. But I sent you one the other day. The Chinese have come up with this one on the Chinese floor, sewing factory floor.
I ran some of those the other night. Yeah.
Oh no, this is a new one I sent you, and they've got they've got these big 350-pound Americans at the sewing machine.
Yep.
And pumping stuff out. Anyways, I don't know.
I did show that the other night.
Yeah, okay.
I did, but I've got this one for you. I got a new thing.
Oh,
I'm not even sure.
You have a new one?
I don't even know who this musician is because I'm so old and I'm kind of out of touch, I guess. Maybe you can help me out. If I don't know. I'll look in the chat over on Rumble and see if anybody knows who the heck is this person in this interview. Well, I don't know who either of these two people are, but I came across this on social media. I said, I have to share this with the Maverick family tonight. So here it is here. I don't know what this is about, but here, I'm going to run it. Let me show you. It's funny as heck. Listen.
That's amazing. I didn't know that about you.
What do you know?
That you're a musician. But that's why I'm interviewing you today, so I can get to know you.
So I'm a musician.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck that mean? Make magic or something? What is musician?
I think you're confusing that.
Yeah, I'm not no musician. I make music. I make music. And that's not all I do. I make music, I act. I'm a TV star too, a young mogul.
Just really quick, I think you're confusing.
I'm not confusing nothing because you don't know. You thought that all I was a magician or whatever the fuck you said.
See, that's what I think you think I said.
No,
I said musician, not magician.
I don't think, baby. I don't think. What is that? That's ghetto. I don't think. I know.
So you
think.
I didn't say magician, Suki. I said musician. And I think you are a musician.
No, baby. I do music.
So you just really quick. For the record, could you say you don't think you're a musician?
I'm not none of that.
But then after that, you just said I do music.
Yeah, I do music.
So, in other words, you're a musician.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
What is that? Could somebody please explain who these people are? Who is, like, I've seen her. Who is that? Anybody in the chat? Anybody know who that is? I'm so out of it. I'm so old.
Rick, you're a dinosaur with Rimby John.
Do you know who that is, John?
No, never. We're very attractive. No, never seen it.
Not attractive to me. It's kind of like, stay away. Stay away.
No, I mean physically, not wokishness. That's where they're getting the views.
I don't know. I guess I don't really. Maybe I don't want to know. How about that? I don't want.
You're too old to want to know, Rickster.
It's just too funny, man. Just too funny. Wow. That's the state of affairs on this. What is it? It's April the 20th, 2025. I have to say, that was ridiculously funny. Donald Trump is not Jesus, so I think that maybe he hasn't done more for religion than anyone else ever. The Easter Bunny thing at the White House is creepy to me. So that's really weird. The whole damn world seems to be upside down. Egg prices are out of control, but I think there's still hope.
Did you find any of that bunny thing feed from the photos from the White House? No.
No, we're going to run that tomorrow when it actually happens.
Okay.
So we'll save this year's. Well, I don't have this year's. I'm not going to run last year's creepy bunny thing. We'll show you the creepy bunny tomorrow. But since we've been talking about groceries and inflation and high prices and stuff, let me see if I can find Midnight Grocery around here for our.
And Rick, what would be any creep? Rick, what would be any creepier than Sleepy Joe, basic Bolshevik bunker Biden at the ice cream house? Do you remember him last year with the Easter egg hunt? I mean, Rick, that was creepy. Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah, every year they do this stuff. It's creepy. It's all creepy. It's going to be creepy when Trump does it too. It's just like it was really creepy with Biden because he was obviously kind of out of it, right? And it was sort of like watching him last year because he's suffering obviously from mental decline. It was like this guy in mental decline suffering from dementia is being followed around by this Easter Bunny guy who then actually has to help the president of the United States find his way. He actually took Joe Biden by the arm and started to guide him to where he was supposed to be because Biden became disoriented. How bad could it get when the Easter Bunny has to help the president find his way back to wherever it was he was supposed to be going because he was lost on the lawn of the White House? That's what it came to last year. And yet this year, somehow, John, seems even creepier. Especially as inflation continues to rise.
Well, so Rick, do I get a quick final thought on Easter Sunday, my friend?
Yeah, wrap it up and then segue into our final song for tonight.
Okay, well, just Rick, it is my Cadbury Easter egg in the mail there, bro. You know the Cadbury Easter eggs?
Yes.
Oh, are those not delicious or what?
I'm at a point in my life where if I eat one of those things, I will go into some sort of a sugar convulsion and blow a blood vessel or something, because there's so much sugar in those things.
They're
I just
so
can't
good,
take it
though. You
anymore.
can't. Oh, they're so good. You can't have one. You got to have like two.
Oh no, that's instant death. I mean, they do taste great, but no, I steer clear of all that stuff. I don't eat. I can't handle that, man. No, too much sugar. I don't eat chocolate. I don't eat candy.
You're not a sweet guy at all. I mean, we know you're sweet, but you don't like a piece of pie or ice cream.
Oh,
or
yesterday my family had this blueberry cheesecake pie thing.
Oh,
and my wife said, do you want some of this pie? Oh yeah, okay, I'll have a piece of blueberry pie. But no, I had cheesecake on the bottom, and it was super delicious. But that just about killed me itself, because it was so rich and full of sugar. It was like, oh my God, this cannot be healthy, but so delicious.
Well, Rick, I'm an old farmer. Whether you're in Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Rickster, I've never met a piece of pie I didn't like.
Well, we like you, John. I also like my fruits and veggies. I was surprised Pierre Poilievre didn't reach behind him during his news conference today and grab an apple and start munching on it just for effect, given that that's kind of his image out there these days, right? But hopefully everybody out there still is gainfully employed enough or have enough income to buy your fruits and veggies as you head off to the grocery store. And with that being said, I'm going to leave you with Maverick and the News Brothers tonight and Midnight Grocery Run. And John, go ahead.
Well, my final thought, Rick, may God bless everybody in the world. We had Good Friday, Easter Sunday. Now we're having Easter Monday. Love to all our Christians around the world, in the United States, Canada. And again, people, let's please pray for people less fortunate than you, the homeless, and let's pray for peace around the world, Gaza, Israel, and Ukraine and Russia. And we always, Rickster, is a paramount on the show, we pray for peace around the world. Always peace, my friend. Love everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. Appreciate all your efforts tonight. Thanks for doing that piece on this big change in the retail landscape. And we're all looking ahead on this Easter weekend to better days down the road. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Maverick and the News Brothers, Midnight Grocery Run. Love you all. See you back here tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Under neon lights after 24/7. Cereal boxes stacked like they're from heaven. Cartwheels squeak while hearts untucked. Past the pickles and we're straight up struck. Midnight grocery run, feeling so divine. Bananas in the basket and we're losing track of time. Laughing through the aisles with you right by my side. This midnight grocery run's a wild ride. Frozen pizzas and a chocolate pie. Scanning items neath the starry sky. Fluorescent glow makes everything so real. In this wonderland we break the seal. Midnight grocery run, feeling so divine. Bananas in the basket and we're losing track of time. Laughing through the aisles with you right by my side. This midnight grocery run's a wild ride. Here's what they know the drill. Roulette moments give a midnight thrill. We dance down our floor like no one sees. Just some dreamers lost in fantasies. Midnight grocery run, feeling so divine. Bananas in the basket and we're losing track of time. Laughing through the aisles with you right by my side. This midnight grocery run's a wild ride.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.